Murphy. There we go. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this.
Uh, my pleasure.
I
Please
have
give me some light on my ass.
I I don't want this to sound bad at all. This is not an
I'm,
age thing,
I'm
but my goodness, I have grown up watching your stuff over the years, and I'm so excited to speak
okay.
with you.
I'm used to it now. Many people say that frequently, and it's okay. I've accepted it. Embraced my maturity.
I
But
mean,
I want to apologize. I'm sorry I had to keep putting you up, but I was on the road with this musical that I wrote and getting it underway, and it was crazy. And so
oh,
now I'm back.
well,
Here we are. Where are you, by the way?
I'm just outside of Detroit.
In what, like 20 Mile or something?
Uh,
Birmingham?
I am about midway between Detroit and Ann Arbor in a town called Westland.
Oh, I spent the summer writing for the Free Press. A
Oh, very
hundred,
cool.
100 summers ago, I'm afraid, but
That you also worked for a newspaper in Chicago, is that right?
mhm.
Very cool.
I worked for the Chicago Tribune and a paper called Chicago Today, which the Trib owned and then folded into the Tribune.
Okay.
It had been Chicago's American, if you're a geek, a newspaper geek, as I am. But I interned at the Free Press and lived at we wound up living. First, I was at 9 Mile in Coolidge, and then a bunch of us who were like interns rented a huge abandoned mansion in Indian Village,
Oh, wow. Which is
which was
super
fabulous. I,
posh
I
now.
lived in the ballroom. I
Wow.
tried to ball as much as possible. But in the neighborhood was these huge houses, and they were uh, the motor company executives had left.
Right.
Who it was, and so the neighborhood was kind of like the DMZ. If you walked a block in the wrong direction, you were dead. So, but now, of course, everything is different. I'm sure it's probably a neighborhood by now. That's actually Ferndale. All my people in Detroit are now in Ferndale, or they're artists who've reclaimed mansions. But I don't think Indian Village. I think on the other side of town, towards Dearborn side of town.
Right. Yeah, no, Indian Village is now very posh.
Oh, I would think.
Yeah.
Well, everything there had good bones,
Right.
except me. Pardon me so much.
Oh, no, no problem.
So, what are we talking about?
Well, I want to ask you about Ice Pirates, if that's all right. And I
Oh,
know,
that's right. Ice Pirate.
yeah.
I'm so glad you are, because I'm writing a book now about how I wrote the worst television shows in history and lived. And I'm including various other disasters and near disasters. And Ice Pirates was actually not it was actually a half-ass hit. But the making of it was kind of disastrous, and it's a funny tale.
Right.
So I'm putting it in the book. But tell me what you know.
Well, I had read that it was much more of a serious film to begin with before they turned it into a comedy. Is that true?
Well, kind of. It was an adventure picture. Stuart Raffle, the director, wrote it. He may have written it himself, or he may have had a collaborator. I don't recall. It's only 40 years ago, and some of the details are hazy. But I suppose I could check the credits, and that might reveal something. But I think he wrote it more as a straight action adventure in the style of Raiders of the Lost Ark, that kind of thing, and with a science fiction twist. And it got as it got it, in the rewrites, it got spoofier and spoofier because it seemed like with the advent of Star Wars and those movies, it seemed like you ripe to make fun of. And in fact, Spaceballs followed us
Right.
literally onto the same stage using some of the same sets.
Oh,
That's
wow.
another part of the story. But it only happened because MGM was in turmoil, and the head of production was fired, and a new head of production was installed. Now, the John Foreman, who is our producer, who had been Paul Newman's producing partner for many years. Newman Foreman was their company, and you'll see the credit on a lot of Paul's pictures. Um, he he had developed this script because he kind of liked the idea. And when the head of production was fired abruptly by Kirk Kerkorian, the man who had bought MGM, John Foreman, as like the senior producer on the lot, was suddenly installed as head of production. So he moved his office from his little bungalow to Louis Mayer's office in the Thalberg building, and he immediately greenlit Ice Pirates.
Wow.
Because it was like a pet project of his. And the reason he could greenlight it was because he took that property with a contract with I want to say a contract player, but it was Robert Urich. Bob Urich was an actor I knew in Chicago when I had been there on newspapers, so we were friendly. And he became a television star when he moved out here. And he made a deal with MGM because he did his first year. I think Vegas may have been an MGM production, and then they wanted him for more productions after Vegas. So in order to get him, they had to guarantee him several movies. Okay. So they had Bob on a payer play looking for material, and this was like a part that, if Harrison Ford couldn't do it, why not make Bob Urich Harrison Ford? So John greenlit it immediately, and it went into production. And nobody expected that to happen. So there were like lots of rewrites and stuff going on. And I was brought in to make it funnier, to add more jokes to it. And around that time, Paul Williams, the tiny little Oscar-winning songwriter, actor, was also a friend, was playing the Weird Wendy, the evil emperor, and he quit. I don't know why he got. I don't know if he may have gotten something else. I mean, it was bigger. I don't remember, but they said, "Okay, you're playing Weird Wendy," because I mean, and he gambles his head away. So I didn't have to do any kind of walking or I had one scene where I was full body, and everything else was my head, just on the throne, on the thing, or whatever. So I said, sure. And I did a rewrite, and they said, well, we didn't expect you to rewrite him and put him entering on page 3. He's a supporting character. So I went back to it, and okay, I'll cut this, I'll cut that. And we started shooting, and Stewart directed it, and we were on the gigantic Stage 30 at Metro, which was Munchkin Land. It was the Emerald City of Oz. It was also had underneath all that a swimming pool, an indoor pool that was Esther Williams, that was dug into the ground because they would put cameras under water through portholes, and they would shoot underwater swimming. So it's a city in itself, this stage. It's absolutely gigantic. And we had these sets, which looked, they dressed them up so they looked okay. And we started shooting the thing, and it was an amazing collection of people. Bob, of course, was the star, and the leading lady was Mary Crosby, who was Bing Crosby's daughter, who older folks will remember as Mary Frances Crosby. When she was a kid, she would hang out with him. And her mother was Catherine Grant, who became Catherine Crosby, and her mother was a movie star in The Big Circus, is a picture I love of hers. So she was, and she later became famous, Mary, for shooting JR on Dallas,
right,
which was a national obsession. JR, Larry Hadme, gets shot, and we don't know who did it. And of course, it's revealed that the secretary he was planking shot him, and that was Mary. And so that was probably Mary's biggest thing ever, was that she shot JR. So, but this was well before. I think it was before. It may have been right around the same time. So she was there, and then we had Anjelica Huston, and Anjelica was, of course, her father was John Huston, the great director, and her grandfather was Walter Huston, the great actor, and her brother is Danny Huston and Tony Huston. There's the dynasty. So she had made one picture. She had made a picture in Israel with Moshe Dayan's son, Asaf Dayan, who they were grooming to be to be like Antonio Banderas, who had not happened yet. And Asaf Dayan, it didn't catch on. It was a medieval romance called A Walk with Love and Death. and it did not do very well. And but John Foreman was very close to Angelica's father, and he put her in this movie where she played the Amazon, very strong. And John's next picture, John Huston's next picture he was developing also with John Foreman was Preetzi's Honor.
Right.
And there was this fabulous part. And John Foreman thought Angelica should do it. And so and Hugh says, "Oh, I don't think she's strong enough. I don't think she's strong enough." And so he showed him the dailies from Ice Pirates, and he said, "Oh, I think she could do this." And of course, she wound up winning the Oscar for it and becoming Angelica Houston. And as a result, she won the Oscar, and she had three pictures. She had A Walk with Love and Death, Ice Pirates, and Preetzi's Honor. So they would show Ice Pirates over and over again, and Ted Turner loved it. And he would show it on all the TBS, TNT, anything with a T in it, he would show it on. And to this day, she says to me, whenever I see her, she says, "I can't escape that goddamn picture." She said, "There's now a whole generation of people who were kids and they grew up watching it on TV. And the first thing they say is, 'Tell us about the Ice Pirates.'" She said, Academy Award-winning actress. She has this brilliant career. I mean, it's not even Morticia Adams they're asking about. They're asking about Ice Pirate. Makes her crazy. So she was in it, and Ron Perlman, who later became the Beast on Beauty and the Beast, and John Matuszak, who was a football player, who one day drove off the lot and smashed into a telephone pole, and we thought he was a goner, but he survived and then OD'd, I believe, or he had a serious drug problem, and but he was such fun to do the movie with. He was great, and we had a couple of days of John Cassavetes. Right. Not John Cassavetes, John Carradine.
Carradine, right.
John Carradine, who was like the Eminence Grise. I mean, he's one of those iconic movie actors, and part of the reason why he was he was from like, the second wave of movie stars was because he just knew how to work the camera. He didn't have, you'd think he wasn't awake. And then you'd see the rushes, and he was perfect. He was indicating exactly what he was supposed to be communicating to the audience. He was tired, but it was a lot of fun, like, to talk to at lunch, because he, of course, had all of these stories, and we were all entranced because people who make movies are all caught up with people who made movies, and I think that still holds true, except that now they view Spielberg and Lucas as the great granddaddies of movies. So times have changed.
Yeah.
And then we were doing the picture. We were shooting the picture, and lo and behold, one day John Foreman got fired as head of production, and he moved from the Louis B. Mayer office back to his bungalow to continue this movie. And of course, as is typical, the new guy came in and said, "Well, we were too far into the picture for him to cancel it." So he said, "Okay, you have to wrap it in 2 weeks." And we had more to do. And so I had to go in and rewrite things. We added a time warp episode, which is strictly to get us through all the material that we didn't have time to shoot.
Oh, God.
But the whole thing was very seat of the pants. And on the last night of production, the Culver City blacked out.
Oh,
there was somebody, not John Matuszak, somebody else ran into a transformer, and the whole town blacked out. So we couldn't shoot the end of the picture. That was the last scene we were shooting. So, John had to make a call to this guy and say, "I'm calling you from the darkness of Culver City. Please let us come back tomorrow and finish this thing." So we came back tomorrow and finished it. And then it was, everything was, raced through the editing. And then Mel Brooks was preparing Spaceballs, and he came over one day and looked at the set, and he said, I'll use this set. And of course, he had a lot more money. I mean, he had a big ass production. And so he had sets all over the lot, but he did use some of them. If you look closely, you'll see some of the things are virtually unchanged. They are the same kind of thing. And then, we sat on it. They didn't sit on it. They wanted to get it released so it would get some of their money back. And the first weekend it did great. I mean, it didn't go through the roof, but John Foreman said it's a half-assed hit. Way more people showed up than they expected. It tracked very low, and three times the amount of people showed up. So, and then it continued to do business, and and then of course, the moment it was available for television and for cable, it became a moneymaker for them.
Hmm.
And but we had no idea it would become in any way iconic. But we weren't gambling with the internet, cable TV. That has made movies like Hocus Pocus Hocus Pocus and Ice Pirates iconic because people can watch them 1,000 times at home.
Right.
Either used to be on their DVD player, now it's on streamers. So we find ourselves, I found myself talking to Mike White 40 years later.
Right. Now
So no, had I known, I say we would have paid closer attention.
you had done a lot of acting earlier in your life. Had you been that much in front of the cameras after that?
No, I was a child actor, but never a child star, or we'd be having this conversation in rehab. I acted a lot on stage,
Hmm.
and I did little things in movies. I would do a scene in this one, a scene in that one, because I'm a type. And then I did Hollywood Squares. Once I was on Hollywood Squares, then I was iconic. I was a gay icon, but also I'd walk in the room and they would say, "Oh well, if we have him, it'll take the whole picture will make a left." Because everybody go, look at that, there's that guy. And I said, I'll shave. I'll change. I'll take off the glasses. I'll act.
Right.
And every now and again, somebody says, "Okay, give that a try." But I continued acting. I went to Broadway with Hairspray and toured. I didn't play the Fisher, but toured around short for a year in it. So I've never stopped the acting part, but it was never. It was never. By then I had a real writing career, so I wasn't. It
Right.
wasn't preeminent.
Had you done much script rewriting at that point?
At that point, I was into it. At that point, I had done a lot of television writing. I had done a lot of variety show writing because I had come out here to do the Manhattan Transfers television show, and I was writing for a lot of TV, and so I was known for that. And when variety television disappeared because of cable, it was supplanted by award shows and specials and things, and I did a lot of those. So I did a lot of that kind of stuff, but I didn't. And then I wrote one of those stories. It'll be in the book. I wrote 15 screenplays that got picked up and sold and never got made for one reason or another. Stars died, studios collapsed. I have a whole litany of things, and I did a whole bunch of pilots, and they didn't happen. It's the luck of the draw. Pauline Kael wrote once that Hollywood is where you can be encouraged to death. It doesn't matter. Didn't work, but go ahead, do it. Try another one. We'll pay you to try something else. So I guess I've been a beneficiary of that.
Right. Were they
So
all comedies, or did you do dramas as
yeah,
well?
funnily enough, I'm called in to add comedy stuff to action movies.
Okay.
Some like Die Hard movies, things like that, and but mostly it's comedy. Yeah.
Hmm.
When you look like this, I could say, look, I've had a hard life. Look how I look. Now I'm going to write my version of Hatful of Rain.
You wrote
You
one of
might
my
buy it.
yeah. You wrote one of my favorite specials, which was the Paul Lynde Halloween special.
I know it's coming up. I'm
Yeah.
plugging it now. Go to a YouTube near you. It will tickle and delight you. It never again we never expected another one. If we'd known, we would have paid closer attention. But that was the day of those wacky 70s variety specials where you just collected a whole bunch of people and concocted a theme, and it was an excuse to get them on. See, part of the reason it died away is because with the advent of cable, you could see them anywhere at any time.
Hmm.
It was kind of amazing that the talk shows didn't die away, but that's because they are relatively cheap to produce. and they're a valuable avenue for plugging other projects. So
Right.
that's why they live. But variety TV is not that, and it's a job. I mean, when we did the Donnie and Marie show, or or SNL is the only one that's still on that's like that, where the guest stars show up on Monday and we shoot on Friday, and it's a week of work,
Right.
learning routines, characters, writing, rewriting, and all that. And people aren't going to give you that anymore. They don't need to. To plug a movie, The Rock will go on Kelly Clarkson and sing a song to plug Black Adam, but that's an hour of his day.
Right.
So people are not going to commit to that kind of schedule anymore. I mean, it used to be a thing to be on Sonny and Cher. Oh boy, there was a whole bunch of people who did those shows, but
Yeah.
not so much no more.
Yeah, it's amazing to even just think of how many people had variety shows and just the sorry for the use of the word, but the variety of variety shows like Shields and Yarnell or Carol Burnett or
Yeah.
Pink Lady
Well,
and
Fred
Jeff.
Silverman was responsible for a lot. Well, he was responsible for all those teams. He came up with Sonny and Cher and Tony Orlando and Dawn and Donnie and Marie and the Brady Bunch Variety Hour, which I wrote, and Pink Lady and Jeff, which I didn't write. I mean, and every summer he would program Joey Heatherton and her father, Ray Heatherton, the Merry Mailman, Joey and Dad. I mean, I could give you the whole list. I mean, it's amazing. He believed in teams. The last thing he did was Barbara Mandrell and the Mandrell sisters.
Oh boy, I forgot about
That
that
was
one.
the last actual network variety show. I mean, that was for real. That lasted. There were a couple of false starts after that, but there was nothing actually lasted. But variety is still there. It's just all competition now.
Hmm.
You watch, so you think you can sing, so you think you can fart. The Masked Farter. I mean, American Idol. The Voice, they're all variety shows. They're people getting out there and singing and dancing. As America's Got Talent has got people, whistling out of their dog. I mean, but they're competitions and there are judges, and so it's kind of like the Olympics every night.
Hmm.
The showbiz is Olympics, and people, America loves that. Although I have to say that a lot of those formats are originated elsewhere in Japan and Holland and Britain, and they're not original American formats. But we seem to really take them like crazy because we like winners,
Hmm.
and we like to support and all that. And incidentally, we watch a lot of people hit a lot of high notes.
Right. Do you mind if I ask you about the Star Wars Holiday Special?
Oh, go right ahead.
I would I would love to know just even how you got involved in it, how that project came together.
It was well, George had just had was about to start The Empire Strikes Back. Star Wars had been out for about a year and a half, and he wanted to stir the pot, and he had a whole bunch of stories lying around that were Star Wars universe, and he was selling them off to various things, and he had one left, and he sold it to CBS as a variety show. And I think had he known, I don't think George was too cognizant of variety shows. I don't think he was a watcher of variety shows, or he would have realized what he was getting into.
Hmm.
But and he also, if he thought they were going to do an original musical, which was how he sold it, he probably would not have sold them a story that involved lead characters, the Wookiees, who could not sing or dance or speak any known language,
Hmm.
and in fact, as I always say, sound like fat people having orgasms. Trust me, I know. So it was weird to write for them, and it was especially because we couldn't use subtitles in those days because they said nobody will read them, which is ironic because now Lupita Nyong'o has been in several of these Star Wars movies and doesn't speak a word of English in any of them. Everything she says is subtitled. She's speaking in Klingon or whatever language Kakaka, her home planet, is. So, but we weren't allowed to, so we had to bring on guest stars who would translate for what the Wookiees were saying
Hmm.
to move the plot along. So right away, I mean, you knew it was doomed. I mean, but it was the 70s. We were all chemically altered. And I say that, and then I see things on blogs saying Valanche, who admits to copious drug use, not copious drug. I smoked a joint,
Yeah.
I mean, I joke that Carrie Fisher and I snorted the sweet and low, but and maybe we did once, but it was not, I was that's not my normal. My resting stone face is not that. So, uh, but it was the era of that kind of, oh, let's try this. Oh, let's try this, and everybody was a little altered. But there were lots of crazy shows, crazy Wayne Newton at SeaWorld, with whales dancing
Right.
behind him. So, I mean, this just seemed like a crazy thing to do with this movie, which I have to tell you, at the time, nobody was saying, "Oh my God, this is the new direction. This is the second coming." It was a fun summer movie that George based on a whole lot of Republic serials, which was Republic Studios did Saturday morning serials. And when George was a kid, he'd go to the movies and see those serials. And it
Right.
was done in the style of that, with the wipes and all of that, which he still uses. So nobody took it terribly seriously. And it had not, Scientology, Star Wars had not yet become the Scientology of the nerds. After the three movies came cable and home video, and that's where all that sprang from, because they began seeing the movies over and over, and creating this whole worship situation, this whole neo religion based around it. And so when the internet came in and the Star Wars Holiday Special popped up, people were going, "What's this, George? How could you betray us like this? With this piece of slime." So it never went away. It became iconic because
Right.
every time he did a new Star, he'd always said he was going to make six movies, and when he did the second three, it came back every time. And now, of course, he's extended it. There have been four more, and two Star Wars universe, Rebel One and Solo, and all that. So there's always a Star Wars movie in circulation. So there's always talk about the thing. It just does not go away. But it was that truly is, we would have paid closer attention. I mean, there was, we were locked into a certain thing, and at some point George just walked away, and when they fired his handpicked director, and the network came in and said, "Okay, we're bringing in people who know how to do this," and then it's it's very. I watched it the other day, and I was thinking it looks so cheesy. I mean, at the time we thought, "Wow, it almost looks like the movie." It looks like paintings, renderings of things that might have been in the movie, but there's a rendering and then there's a set, which is nothing like it, and some very strategic lighting, so you don't see how unlike it is.
Right.
And of course, there are the Wookiees clomping and stomping and all the way through the thing. So, but it's a trash classic. What can I tell you?
Yeah. Who'd you work on that with? Was that Pat Proft? In
Pat
was it?
Proft and Lenny Rips, who were a writing team at the time,
Yeah.
a wonderful writer named Ron Perlman, who was known as Ronnie Perlman. There were three Ron Perlmans. One of them ran Revlon, and the other two, Ronnie Perlman was a writer who at the time was going with Linda Ronstadt,
Oh.
and so she was around, and then Ron Perlman, who was the actor in Ice Pirates later. But Ronnie Perlman, who was my favorite, was a very, very funny writer, and he had a bad back and used to lie on the floor during meetings and like shout up his ideas. It was that kind of a staff. And then Ken and Mitzi Welch, who were a husband and wife songwriting team and writing team, who had written a lot for Carol Burnett. They had written all the musical material that was on the Burnett show, those huge parodies and big production numbers and stuff. They were on it. And Gary Smith came in. Steve Binder, who had produced Elvis, the Elvis in Hawaii, which big concert that's now
Oh
revered.
yeah.
I mean, he's really good, and he came in and fixed it basically. And I'm sure there may have been. I think I'm trying to think if there were other writers who I'm forgetting, but I don't think so. I think that was it. I think I don't. Maybe you know. Could look it up because I am writing about it.
Yeah, tell me about more about your book. I'm very curious, and I can't wait to
My
read it when
my
it
book
comes
is
out.
about how I wrote the worst TV shows and lived, and I'm calling it. It seemed like a bad idea at the time because they were all, like, really, you want to do that? But they came to me. It was already sold. I said, fine, but
Right.
I'm using it as a way in to talk about this bizarre career that I've had.
Yeah. Well, I always love when you pop up on stuff, and I always love to see your name in the credits.
Ah, well, there it is. It's there. It's oh, that's sorry. I did something wrong.
Oh, no problem.
It's on. Computer was yelling at me.
Oh,
It's on 25 Oscar shows, so that's and a lot of those worked. Some of them were disasters, but a lot of them worked.
oh yeah, yeah. Well, I was watching the documentary about you today, and the all those great, the Whoopi Oscars, the Billy Crystal Oscars. I mean, those are classics. Those are
Yeah,
absolute classics.
yeah, and more so now because they have such trouble doing it now.
Yeah.
Of course, I mean, last year was a mess before Will Smith, so
Are you still working on those shows?
I unofficially, I people call me in. I did some work for Wanda Sykes on the last one, and
Okay.
other people they get the material and they say, "Oh, I don't like this. Would you fix it?" Because they know I'm around.
Hmm.
But a lot of times, the hosts come in and they bring their own writers,
Hmm.
and the Academy's budget is such that it's eaten up by all the host writers, and so they have to bring in a couple of people, or at least one of whom knows what he's up to, John Max, who has written on a lot of them.
Hmm.
And but they bring in a lot of people who don't know how to write that kind of stuff. And I mean, you are handed Keanu Reeves to write something for, and what are you going to write? Bill and Ted? I mean, you're going to write some sparkling dialogue like The Matrix? He's Keanu Reeves. He doesn't have a Keanu Reeves stage persona.
Right.
So you have to know how to give him something that's not going to make him sound like a pompous guy reading something from a teleprompter,
Hmm.
yeah. or some ridiculous banter that he has no reason. When does he ever banter? I mean, if so that's an interesting task, and a lot of writers don't know what to do with it. They're not up to it, or there's no reason why they should be. They have careers writing other things,
Hmm.
and they're brought to the show because they think, "Ooh, I'll go to the Oscars. I'll get a gift basket. I'll get to chase Timothy Chalamet around." So,
How does it feel when something that you've written just really lands and it's somebody else saying those words? What does that feel like for you?
yeah, it's orgasmic. It's
Yeah.
great because I mean, there's a great deal of pride. I mean, I suppose if I had a kid and a kid did something extraordinary and I was there to witness it, it would be that kind of feeling like, wow, all of that work paid off, or words to that effect.
Yeah.
And when it goes down in flames, you really feel like, as I said in the movie, it's like a plane load full of people who you love going down in flames. It's
Right.
awful. It's a horrible feeling, and especially if you feel like, well, you can blame it on a lot of different things, but when there's nothing to blame it on, by it wasn't as good as you thought it was. You can't blame it on them. You can't blame it on a sound glitch. You can't blame it on they cut away or whatever. There are a million things you can blame it on, but ultimately you have to accept responsibility for it.
Right.
But that doesn't come without a price. You don't get to be 237 pounds without a lot of pizza.
Hmm. So you just were working on a musical. You've got the book that you're working on. How many projects do you work on at a time?
There's no set limit.
Wow.
You're always, people are always saying, you wake up, you have an idea, you write it down, and then you see where it goes. So I mean, there's no limit. That you tend to have to, at a certain point, you have to just move all of them out of the way and concentrate on the one at hand,
Hmm.
whatever that happens to be. So when I was on the road with this musical, Here You Come Again, that was what I was doing. I was, sitting in Delaware, rehearsing all day and doing the show, watching the show at night, and there was no time for anything else. But Yeah, but I'm not one of those writers, who goes off in a cabin in the woods and gets hobbled by a demonic nurse. That's Stephen King. Novelists tend to be like that. They tend to go away for 3 months and emerge with a novel.
Mhm.
I'm much too social, and a lot of the work I do is collaborative
Right.
in a room with other people. So and performative. We all get up and we carry on and shout lines at each other, and so I'm that kind of a writer. Although I would, you know, I mean, I keep thinking it'd be fun to go off someplace and just say, okay, now I'm going to write this. But with the internet now, it's everything is just too, and it's too interesting, and I'm also too used to coming up with stuff, the things as they are happening,
Mhm.
to be that kind of guy. So there you go.
I know that you're a newspaper junkie, but how are you even getting your fix these days?
Well, like everybody else online. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
there's certain sites I go to every day and read, and I am on Facebook, and I mean, so I keep up. And there's, stuff comes into the inbox.
Mhm.
And the nice part of it is I keep saying I don't have the clutter I used to have, but I'm looking around in my office and it's full of clutter. Somehow I've managed to, I'm this far from being a hoarder. I keep thinking, oh, I'll read that magazine from June of 2017. I will.
Uh, I know that feeling.
So eventually, at a certain point, I say, okay, let's get rid of this, and then the room looks so empty.
Right. Then you gotta fill it back up again.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
That's like you saying. I'll fill it back up.
So what's next for you?
Next for me, well, he's waiting outside now. What is next for me? Well, we're going to do 7 more productions of the Dolly thing. We
Great.
start at Fort Worth. We open Fort Worth November 5th at Casa Mañana. And then we will do Pittsburgh and Nashville, where Dolly will unveil it. And Goodspeed Opera House next summer, and a few more after that. So that's in the immediate something. And then I've got to like kick ass and finish this book. So that's what I have. That's what I'll be doing.
Well, fantastic. Mr. Valanche, thank you so much for your time. This was so
Oh,
great.
great, terrific. I love meeting you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry it took so long. Now, how
Mm.
many people think you're the other Mike White?
Oh, a lot, a
All
lot.
right.
I think
The
that's
White
helped.
Lotus guy wants me on his podcast. What?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I even had John Grease on the show,
I knew
and
him before he was the White Lotus guy.
right,
I love White Lotus. I love the White Lotus.
yeah. Grice is like,
You
why are
had
you
who?
asking me, John Grice, the actor, and he's on White Lotus, but he's been on this show before, and he's like, why is he
Oh,
asking me to be on a podcast? And then he finally remembered that
that.
he knows two Mike Whites. So
Who was
yeah,
it? Who was he on White Lotus?
I don't remember because I haven't watched
I
it
don't,
yet.
I don't know him because I
Yeah,
don't remember. So obviously I don't remember him, but I don't
right.
know.
He's mostly known if you've seen Napoleon Dynamite, he played Uncle Rico, and he was Laszlo in Real Genius. So really nice guy. So if you ever get a chance to meet him, I highly recommend it.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh,
But yeah, no, that also helped me get Brenda Vaccaro at one point. And then
ah,
there was a director who was talking with me and he just kept saying, well, you know how it is. You know how it is. And I was just like, oh shit, he thinks I'm the other guy.
yeah, right. Mhm.
So yeah,
Brenda's an old friend, and I send her all my monogrammed items when I'm done with them.
very nice.
And then she gives them to Ben Vereen. It's just a vicious cycle.
Well, thank you. This was such a pleasure.
So,
I don't get nervous before interviews too much, but yours I got
wow.
nervous for. So because yeah, I just hold you
No
very high
need.
esteem. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank
Uh,
you. My pleasure.
all right. Hope
Have a
to
good
talk to you
night.
again sometime. Take care.
Bye.